So, Angelica, at the top of the hour, you can go ahead and get started.
Got it.
And let's see, let me check for Traco quick.
I will begin.
Um, I don't see Commissioner Matthews yet. You can start if you like, and then we can acknowledge when he arrives.
Let's move forward then.
Okay.
The
If the staff could
Cali-
go ahead and let people in the room and go live.
We're ready.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you. The California Racial Equity Commission Community Engagement Meeting is called to order at 3:01 on Thursday, May 22nd, 2025. As we begin today's virtual meeting, we will begin with a few reminders. First, the information and opinions expressed by presenters or the public commenters before the commission reflect the views of the speaker. They do not necessarily represent the views of the commission or the governor's office of land use and climate innovation. Second, as a public advisory body, we will allow public input at all meetings. However, we stand united with other Californians in condemning hate and recognizing the harm it causes. A hate act is a hostile expression or action committed in whole or in part because of the person's actual or perceived identities or characteristics, including race, color, disability, religion, national origin, sexual orientation, or gender, including a gender identity and/or because of the person is part of a protected group. The rich diversity among our population in California is one of our state's greatest assets, and we are committed to supporting and protecting all people in California. As a reminder, if you are a victim or witness to hate, racism, or bullying, you can report the incident and receive free support through the California versus Hate resource line by calling 833-8-NO-HATE or visiting californiaversushate.org. We will now proceed with our land acknowledgement. I would like to begin by acknowledging the indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are here on today. While we meet today on a virtual platform, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands which we all call home. The virtual meeting was made accessible to the public at the Governor's Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation in Sacramento. The history of the Sacramento area and the people is rich in heritage, culture, and tradition. The area was and still is the tribal land of the Nisinan people. Sacramento was a gathering place for many local tribes who have lived throughout the Central Valley and the foothills for generations and were the original stewards of this land. We would like to acknowledge the southern Maidu peoples to the north, the valley and the plains, the Miwok peoples to the south of the American River, and the Patwin-Wintom peoples to the west of the Sacramento River. We would also like to honor the Wilton Rancheria, the only federally recognized tribe in Sacramento County. We acknowledge that we are standing on the tribal lands of Sacramento's indigenous people. Thank you. Dr. Estes, can you please provide us an overview of the agenda for this meeting?
Thank you, Commissioner Salas. Our agenda for this meeting covers 5 agenda items. We're currently on agenda item 1, welcome and roll call, or call to order, excuse me. Public comment on matters not on the agenda. The committee will then approve the December 19th, 2024 committee minutes. Senior Program Analyst Jordan Ringgold and Senior Program Analyst Dylan Turner Keener will provide an overview and an update of some of the community engagement work to date related to the plan, as well as a toolkit they are building out. Senior Program Analyst Jordan Ringgold will follow up with a summer roadshow overview. And then we'll take a brief break, and our facilitator, Joyce Chow, will do a workshop prioritizing, helping and having discussion around prioritizing community engagement strategy. And we have hard copies of the agenda, available at the physical meeting location, 1400 10th Street, room 103, Sacramento, California. Materials are also available online at racialequity.lci.ca.gov. And now I'll turn it back over to you, Commissioner Salas.
Thank you, Dr. Estes. Agustin Areola, our External Affairs Manager of Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation, will lead the roll call and provide an overview of the public comment process.
Thank you. I will go ahead and begin roll call with Commissioner Angelica Salas,
Present.
Commissioner Candace Bowles,
Present.
Commissioner Traco Matthews, and Commissioner Virginia Hedrick.
Present.
Thank you. We have achieved quorum. I'm going to go over the public comment process. So thank you to everyone joining us online today. I'm here to provide some guidance for the processes of this meeting, which we have designed with the intention of maximizing access by members of the public. For those joining the webinar online via Zoom or by phone, please note that your microphone is automatically muted when you join. To minimize the risk of background noise, you will not be able to unmute yourself. For those joining online via Zoom, please note that the webinar platform doesn't enable video for attendees, so we will not be able to see you. If you need technical assistance during the meeting or have a question about the meeting process, there are a few ways to contact us. If you are online via Zoom, the best way is by using the Q&A function, with several members of the Racial Equity Commission team monitoring it. If you joined by phone and you have access to email, please email racialequitycommission@opr.ca.gov. If you plan to make public comment virtually, you must be online via Zoom, either through the webinar or phone option. To submit an online public comment form, visit racialequity.lci.ca.gov/meetings and complete the public comment form link there. You'll need to complete a separate form for each item on which you wish to speak. You may complete a form at any time during the meeting. When the chair opens a public comment period for your item, we will call on your name. When you hear your name, please raise your hand. To do this online in the Zoom webinar, click Raise Hand under the Participants menu. You can find that at the bottom of your screen. To raise your hand by phone, press *9. When it is your turn to speak, a member of our team will unmute your microphone. If you are online, you will see a window pop up alerting you that the host is unmuting you. You will need to click the option to approve unmute. After that, you can begin your comment. If you're on via your phone, you will hear a recorded message alerting you that your line is unmuted. You can begin your comment once your line is unmuted. Each speaker will have a maximum of 2 minutes to make their remarks. Speakers requiring or using interpretation services are allotted 4 minutes to facilitate full participation. If you're online, you'll see a timer pop up on your screen. Please monitor that and wrap up accordingly. If you are unable to complete the online form but would like to make a public comment, please email racialequitycommission@opr.ca.gov. Thank you. Back to you, Commissioner Salas.
Thank you, Agustin. We will now take any public comments related to agenda item number 1. Welcome.
There are no public comments for agenda item number 1.
Thank you. Before we move into the rest of our agenda items, we will first take any public comments on items not on the agenda.
Thank you. I see one person signed up for public comment. Elena Santamaria, can you please raise your hand and we will go ahead and unmute you. Elena, you may begin your public comment when you're ready.
Hi, good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Elena Santamaria, and I'm the Partnerships Manager and Senior Policy Advisor with NextGen California and a member of the California Racial Equity Coalition, or CREC. CREC has monitored the implementation of the Commission's work and appreciates all the time over the past year the Commission and the Commission staff have put to gather information to build the foundation for the state's racial equity framework. From having meetings all across the state to providing childcare and translation services at various meetings, CREC appreciates the intentionality the Commission has put in demonstrating pieces of what sustained community engagement can look like. In preparation for the completion of the framework, CREC has had the opportunity to survey its members of the coalition who work with local and state departments and agencies to learn about their experience of what current community engagement efforts and what they hope can be improved in the future. We hope these summarized findings can help strengthen the foundations of the framework and help California's government implement and better understand how to meaningfully engage with the community. We ask that the framework incorporate these key findings from the survey, which include relationship building, accessibility, inclusivity, and transparency. We're in the process of summarizing the findings and finalizing the document, but we'll be sure to share the summary with all subcommittee members soon and uplift some highlights, hopefully during agenda item 4. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. That concludes public comment for agenda item number 2.
Thank you. Now we will move into agenda item number 3, the approval of our December 19, 2024 meeting minutes. Are there any comments or questions or discussion from the committee on this
Commissioner
item?
Salas, I just want to acknowledge that Commissioner Matthews is verbally present, just so that's on record with our YouTube recording.
Thank you. Welcome, Commissioner Matthews. Continuing on, are there any comments, questions, or discussion from the committee on this item? Seeing none, before we call for a motion, we will first take any public comment related to this agenda item.
Thank you, Commissioner. As a reminder, you may submit a virtual public comment card by visiting racialequity.lci.ca.gov/meetings and completing the public comment form linked on there. As of this moment, we do not have any public comment for agenda item number 3.
Thank you, Agustin. I will now call for a motion. So may I have a motion and a second to approve our December 19, 2024 committee meeting minutes?
This is Virginia. I so move.
A second, please.
I second. This is Candace Bowles.
And I think all in favor? Or Agustin, please take, I'm so sorry. Agustin, please take the roll call vote.
You, Commissioner Salas. I'll begin roll call with yourself, Commissioner Salas.
Yay.
Commissioner Bowles.
Yay.
Commissioner Matthews.
Hear me? Yeah. Yes.
Thank you. Can hear you loud and clear now. Commissioner Hedrick.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you so much, Agustin. We will now move on to our next item, which is our agenda item number 4, which is our community engagement plan update and overview of our community engagement toolkit. We have commission staff, Dylan Turner-Keener and Jordan Ringwald, here to share an update on the community engagement plan and provide an overview of the community engagement toolkit. I will now pass it on to Dylan and Jordan.
Good afternoon. I will start us off with our community engagement work updates. So in the first phase of the community engagement plan, the commission has hosted several meet and greets, listening sessions, and public meetings throughout the state. Some of the themes that we've seen emerge from these events include disparities in affordable housing, career readiness and civic education, job opportunities and access, and distrust. We also heard from communities that there is a desire for more political and civic engagement, especially with communities and regions that are less represented or less visible. So the commission's learnings from these community engagement spaces will inform the development of the community engagement strategy that will be included in the framework. And we'll also move the community engagement work forward in partnership with Global Urban Strategies. And that is a California-based consulting firm that provides a range of services, including strategic communication, community outreach, graphic design, and more. So from now until 2027, they will support the Commission's community engagement work, which will include outreach, a rollout strategy for the framework, and refining the community engagement toolkit. And now I will pass to my colleague who will share more details about the toolkit.
Greetings, commissioners. So the commission wanted staff to develop a community engagement tool. So we took that on and decided to develop a toolkit that will serve as a tool to standardize our community engagement events and gather more information from attendees across all of our engagement activities and events for better insights and themes on trends that we're learning from our listening sessions and meet and greets. I incorporated elements from the spectrum of community engagement, which also informs the framework this way. So the toolkit has processes of informing, consulting, evolving, collaborating, and deferring to community. I wanted to emphasize listening and understanding the context and stories of communities to help advance the work of the commission. So the toolkit also provides support with building relationships and our partnerships with community and establishes trust between the commission and the public. The toolkit centralizes commission's learnings and lessons and stories shared at these events, which will also help inform the framework. The toolkit also contains a community survey to hear about community thoughts on how to improve our commission's community engagement, and we will be supported by global outreach strategies to help refine the survey and further support the development of the toolkit as well. And I wanted to show an example of the graphic notes that Raven takes for our meet and greets, just to add, again, more information and context to what is also presented to the public. And now I will pass it back to Commissioner Salas.
Thank you, Dylan and Jordan, for these updates. Are there any comments, questions, or discussion from our committee members? Well, okay, thank you. So if we have no comments, first of all, thank you, Dylan and Jordan, for the presentation. We will now take any public comments related to agenda number 4, Community Engagement Plan Update and an overview of the Community Engagement Toolkit.
Thank you, Commissioner Salas. There are no public comments for agenda item number 4.
We're moving very quickly. Thank you. We will continue then to our next item. We will now move to agenda item number 5, which is now going to be about our summer roadshow overview. We will again have our commission staff member, Jordan Ringwald, who will share the details of the commission's upcoming roadshow this summer to continue the commission's community engagement work. And I will now pass it on to Jordan.
Thank you. Yes, I will go over an overview of our summer work. Just want to add a note that these things are subject to change as we are still working through the logistics and details, but I will get started. So this would be phase 2 of the community engagement plan, which will begin this summer. And the purpose of this roadshow is to really leverage planning and outreach strategies from phase 1 of our community engagement plan and return to communities to report back how their experiences and their perspectives have been reflected in the framework. So through an interactive process, community will be able to provide us feedback and we'll be able to have an opportunity, both staff and commissioners, an opportunity to collaborate with community to identify ways the framework can be improved. So we have a few outcomes to share for the roadshow. One is to return to at least 60% of the communities that were visited from January of 2024 through June of this year. And we also want to share draft content of the framework and engage in discussion with community to solicit feedback through that interactive collaborative process. So we have a draft of what a roadshow event will look like. Should all look similar. We'll start with a welcome. We'll provide an overview of the commission and our charge. We'll share key themes that we've learned throughout the state and share where we are now, which is our framework, where we are at that point. And we'll engage in that interactive feedback activity with community and close out and identify any next steps. And I think lastly, I have a timeline to share. So again, this is subject to change, but we're looking at the first week of July to have a kickoff, which would likely be some digital engagement. And then our first stops would be Bakersfield and Fresno. And then we'll go to Riverside and Imperial Valley. And then at the beginning of August, Los Angeles County, which includes Antelope Valley. The last stop in August would be Yuba City, Sacramento, and Oakland. And then at the end of August, we would have a closeout similar to the kickoff, which would likely be some kind of digital engagement. So more details to come. And thank you. I will pass it back to Commissioner Salas.
Thank you again, Jordan, for providing an overview of the roadshow this summer. And we're looking forward to hearing from our community and continuing our community engagement work. And really, I think it's important to be able to go back and really reflect on the work that's been done. Are there any comments, questions, or discussions from the committee on the summer roadshow?
Hi, this is Virginia. Yeah, and I have a couple of questions and maybe feedback. So one is, will there be like a publicly available set of questions that communities will know that is kind of being asked of them as a prompt? I know when we're asking community to show up and respond, like how will that be messaged, like communicated to them, the framework, and are they responding in real time? Will folks be able to submit comments in advance so that commission staff can be prepared for, you know, elements that the community might be bringing forward that's relevant to like the geographic regions they're in?
Thank you for that question, Commissioner Hedrick. We are starting to build out a bit of a process with Global Urban Strategies on how to best do this. I think they're a really good partner for us to think about how to go back to community and share what we've heard and also communicate what we've developed thus far. I haven't given much thought yet to whether we would have questions that are pre-developed to go to the community with, just because I think each community may have different questions. But I do think that really the essence of the coming back to community is really to demonstrate the progress, demonstrate that we listen, and demonstrate that we're also trying to keep and be in conversation. I will say that I am working in the background with our app development team to try to be able to gather information through a public comment type process virtually, where we'll have a document that they can download, review, either add comments to that document or submit a form that allows them to add comments to that. And that's something that we're trying to manage in our development. We're pretty close to finalizing that development, and we'll start testing it out in the next couple weeks.
And then I think the other question I have is really about how we reach communities that are not geographic in nature. So, for example, Indian country, like those folks who are American Indian Alaska Native who may not, particularly in urban counties, be centered in a specific region. Like, will we have specific outreach? I'm also thinking of like large faith-based communities in California that have a network sort of through the state. Like, will we have targeted community outreach that is not geographic in nature?
Yes, so that's also part of what we're working with Global Urban Strategies on, and that comes from discussion in previous committee meetings around how we're reaching communities that are not necessarily geographic, like you shared in nature. I will share that I did have a conversation with the Episcopal Church in their Diocese of Northern California earlier this week, and just talking about some of the things that they're doing, working on racial equity and racial justice, and creating and offering the space should they want us to come and have that conversation. I'm also very cognizant of not everyone wants to be in conversation with the Racial Equity Commission. And so a lot of that is about building the relationships up front and allowing the invitation to come or having them reach out and just knowing that we're there and present. And so there's a two-way street in the communication that does have to happen, but they do need to start, we want people to make sure that they know about us and they have the opportunity to share their experiences with us and their stories with us and their thoughts.
And I think I'll pause for other commissioners, but I have other thoughts and questions too.
I would say continue, Commissioner Hendrick.
So the other question is about geographic reach and sort of like the eastern side of California, particularly east of the Sierras. It's not easily seen on the map provided, but there's a large geographic gap between the Central Valley and the Owens Valley. And so, and I know that's a really hard to reach area, like geographically as well. But wondering like what our efforts are to be inclusive and of a very overlooked region in California.
We've attempted to identify locations that might be able to host us, and I think it's something to think about in future meetings. I think the question back to this committee is, do you want to work to have something out there knowing that we are on a very short timeline to produce a framework? And we could try to do a community engagement kind of event there, activity. If you have any partners or organizations that we might want to reach out to and see if there's interest, I would be more than happy to reach out and or receive that connection. But we don't have those explicitly, at least within our immediate network. So if there are any, we'd be happy to take that. We did try to do some work in Placer County, but there was some hesitation, just to be quite honest. And I think given the political climate, that's some of what we can expect. So it's not for not having tried, but I would love if there's any additional thoughts or reflections, happy to try to figure out how we make it work and create that bridge within the geographic region that is often left out.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Hedrick, for those inputs and just suggestions. I think they're really important. I will now go to Commissioner Bowles.
Can we have listening sessions with organizations that work in those communities? You know, it's not as direct as engaging with people directly, but benefiting from the work that they're already doing, from their presence there, since a lot of this also requires rapport building that we don't have. Can we talk to people who already have that rapport because they're there in the community and they might have a lot that they can share with us in a virtual session?
Absolutely. I think that's part of the opportunity that we can build out with the roadshow having a virtual option up front. But we can also do something specific to east of the Sierras.
I will add one more, which is I also think about maybe for the summer to also for the commissioners, for certainly for this committee, but the rest of the Racial Equity Commission, to identify gathering moments, conferences, activities that are happening in the identified regions that Commissioner Hedrick presented, but elsewhere, because maybe what we also are doing is providing, being present, describing what we're doing, inviting for participation. So maybe we can support our contractor or consultant in this process to also say these are some places where we might even have gatherings by organizations that actually have multiple representatives from different regions. So I think it's maybe we can solicit that support from the rest of our commissioners, as well as obviously from staff, to know where we can gather. And I was thinking about interfaith leaders that I know might be gathering this summer across the state. So could we connect with them at that place? So those just to add that as an additional way by which to connect with community.
And I do want to acknowledge that the racial equity framework is not a one and done document, but rather advancing racial equity in the state of California is a journey. And while we will be going to we've gone to several locations, we'll be going to locations throughout the next several years. There is plenty of opportunity to engage. And I think part of the reason why the commission move forward a community engagement plan that does look to reach out to the communities that you shared, Commissioner Hedrick, and us building in a contract to kind of help us do that and figure that out. And I really hesitate on digital engagement just because not everybody is digitally connected. And so working with global urban strategies on understanding what is the network and how do we connect into some of those spaces that isn't always reliant on digital engagement.
Are there any other comments or suggestions from our commissioners on this item?
I have one more, and Director Estes, you can tell me if you think this falls in the latter conversation, and it's at what you mentioned earlier, the political climate, and talking about racial equity when we have executive orders specifically about DEI, and I think that there's a lot of tension raising in the country and certainly in California. How are we working to address that gap? Or do we have any guidance from the governor specific to this commission and this current climate?
The guidance that we've received is the work continues. We've been advised to make sure that we are data driven, that we are using plain and simple language, all things that we have talked about within our commission meetings. Excuse me. So as we build out the framework and in our engagement, really keeping that front and center, making sure that we are communicating with communities in plain and simple language about what is the work of the commission and what do we hope to achieve with the framework.
That said, the only thing I wanted to mention, going back to Commissioner Hedrick's first question about potentially having some questions that everyone can be thinking about and reacting to, I think it would be important for us to just acknowledge in this political environment, probably most communities are thinking about things that they may lose. And it might be a worthwhile question to have something prepared of the nature, what are you hoping we get to keep? Or what do you want us to keep? And prioritize. And that might be a good icebreaker or a great question for every community where you go, that gives people an opportunity to just share, sometimes some of their fears, their concerns, but also really hone in on what is most important to them. And while certainly folks are going to have different priorities in their respective communities, I'd bet $100 that almost every community is super concerned and probably will want to speak to that at some level.
I agree, and I think there is nuance with sending staff out to collect this information that represents the office of the governor versus commissioners who are appointed and appointed to a public advisory body. So yes, those are things we can ask, but it does mean something and make a difference when it's coming in and through commissioners versus coming through staff. And it's just that we have to be mindful of given our roles within state government.
Okay, so if I'm hearing correctly, what you're saying is we can ask that question more feasibly than maybe your staff, and which is fine. I think most of the listening sessions, we're probably going to have commissioners there, or the intent is to have commissioners there.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it is. It's the intent to have commissioners there, and it's important in having that type of dialogue to have the commissioners there.
Fair
We
enough. Yeah,
can
because
do.
I'm just thinking, yeah,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm thinking about all of the CBOs in my region and all of the faith-based organizations and churches in my region. And if I were to show up to a listening session and not say anything about what's happening, I think folks would be like, Traco is either tone deaf or he's being inauthentic. So I've been trying to think of what's the right approach. And so I think that's a fair question, just to acknowledge and say, hey, we know there's a lot happening. How are you doing? And know everyone has their own concerns. Um, what do you want to see? Where do you want to see us commit energy? And I think that's, like I said, a pretty general question that probably applies almost across the board. And I'm happy to ask that question. I think it's important that someone is asking that question wherever we go.
And I think what I'm also hearing, Commissioner Matthews, is that we acknowledge the reality of how we're doing this work.
Yes.
Continue to do this work, and our community engagement needs to continue to solicit. Obviously we're California, we're moving in a particular, as we heard from Dr. Estes, sort of like move forward, continue, but we're actually continuing our work, are committed to this work. But we're also doing it in a new context, political context, and that should be acknowledged and connected to as we enter into different community spaces. So I think that's certainly what I'm hearing. And I think what Dr. Estes is also saying, well, as commissioners, we need to design and guide both staff and our consultant with some of that information as well. So I
Works
hear
for me.
you, and I agree with you as well. We had a similar conversation in our implementation and technical committee as well. So I hear you. Any other comment? These are very valuable comments and suggestions. Any additional comment on this item? Okay, having no more comments from our commission on this item, I will now pass it back to Agustin to provide public comment from our community on this item.
Commissioner Salas, and just to confirm, this is agenda item number 4 or number 5?
Number 5. We are on number 5. We will now take public comments on agenda number 5, which is
There's a last minute public comment that came in for agenda item number 4, but we do not have any for agenda item number 5.
Let's take then our agenda item number 4, public comment at this time.
Thank you. Elena Santa Maria, you may begin your comment when you're ready.
Hello, commissioners. Me again, Elena Santamaria, and I think my internet had cut out right during this, so apologies for coming in late on this agenda item. I think what I had referenced before earlier, my public comment of what we at CREC hope to provide as information from our coalition, our experiences with government as it relates to community engagement, we'll continue to provide that for you. I was going to reference some things, but I thought it would be related to the toolkit, and so I think what I'd prefer to do is, if I may take a moment to perhaps ask some clarifying questions as to the role of the toolkit and how is that similar or different to what will be included in the framework related to the community engagement plan. I think I'm still a little confused as to which one's which and what is what. And then will there be a proposed community engagement plan available for folks to respond to during the roadshow? And what that would look like when that happens. So I think that's all, and I'm still trying to put the pieces together, so I appreciate your patience with me gathering my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Dr. Estes, you were going to provide a response to.
Yes, during public comment, it is not the appropriate time to respond to questions that come during the public comment period. But Elena, if you would like to schedule some time to meet to talk a little bit more about our vision for the community engagement plan, please reach out to me directly. Also, I encourage you to continue to attend these committee meetings as well as our full commission meetings, where we'll have more robust dialogue with the full commission.
Okay, that concludes public comment for this agenda item.
At this time, we will now take a 15-minute recess and maybe staff can tell us in terms of what time we will be returning.
Is there someone in the room that is going to be setting the timer? If you could provide that information, please.
Can do the math.
My math says 3:55.
That's right.
All right, 3:55, please.
See you there.
Thank you.
Just checking in to see if we have all our staff here. Okay, beautiful. Wonderful. We're now moving forward with our agenda after our break. We will now move to agenda item number 8, which is next steps for staff act. I'm so sorry. We'll now move to agenda item number 7, which is our workshop prioritizing community engagement strategy discussion. We will have our facilitator, Joyce Chow, who will take us through this workshop and facilitate the committee discussion. I will now pass it on to Joyce.
Thank you, Commissioner Salas. Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be here with you all and to listen to a lot of the already very fruitful conversations happening within this committee meeting. So I'm really looking forward to digging into this discussion and truly in the spirit of being able to engage with the discussion in these deep, meaningful ways. I'm going to keep this introduction a bit brief. So just kind of contextualizing where we are with this workshop, we've had different iterations of these conversations around like what are the strategies that committees want to elevate into the racial equity framework. As committee members of different committees, I know you all have been engaged in these conversations in different flavors and different formats. And what we're doing here for the Community Engagement Committee today will be somewhat similar. So folks may have kind of seen this structure before, right? We are looking to continue having these discussions so that we identify those 3 to 5 core community engagement strategies to incorporate into that June racial equity framework outline. Now, again, I'll just remind folks that we have through December 2025 to flesh out the full framework. And so, again, just want to note that, while we're trying to become increasingly concrete in our conversations, please do not feel that pressure to have this be a one and done, and then that's it. There's no going back. There is some flexibility in this process, and we're really trying to build that in. So the format for today's discussion will look like this. We'll take a look at a couple of, just key points of discussions, things that have come up already in past conversations to spark some thoughts, get the wheels turning. And then we'll take a look at some of the strategies that we've been talking about among this committee, but also among broader commission meetings and discussions to see if they still feel right, if we want to adjust anything, if there's any new thoughts that are sparking for us at this point in the conversation. So with community engagement best practices, I know this was one of the questions that commissioners had asked for in prior conversations. And so there's a couple of things that I want to start with here. Both of these snapshots that you see on this slide are from the asset analysis that we reviewed in the December 19th, 2024 commission meeting. And so on the left side here, just kind of bringing this back up for us to think on, consider how it informs the strategies. One of the things that this asset analysis highlighted was of the state agencies and departments who responded to this survey, the majority of them are engaging with communities in some form, right? We've got 86% on that inform stage all the way through 21% in defer to. So we can kind of see how the percentages do become lower and lower as we get along that spectrum of community engagement. But there is some form of either inform, consult, involve, collaborate, and then even fewer defer to. And I know the spectrum of community engagement has already come up in earlier conversations today, really thinking about where this fits in the community engagement toolkit and things like that. So wanted to highlight that data point again, as something we consider going into this discussion. The quick data point, oh, if we go back to the last slide, just want to make a quick note about the data point to the right as well. So there was also a question of how organizations distribute information intended for the public. And what we saw here was overwhelmingly, almost all organizations who responded talked about the organization's website, right? The second highest response here was public meetings. And one thing that I think is maybe important to note or helpful to consider is just thinking about the nature and the structure of these types of engagements, right? What kind of communication is happening? What kind of structure are they happening in? We have seen ourselves through commission meetings that the public engagement of public meetings happens in a very specific way, right? And so what does that mean as we think about the racial equity framework and some of the strategies and recommendations we're providing to departments and agencies? Okay. The other data point that I'll leave us with before we get into the conversation is sort of bringing back some things that we've talked about. So just reminding us that we're not starting this conversation from scratch, really regrounding us in the work that's happened to date. Also in December, we had this commission discussion where we talked about the core themes, recommendations that were bubbling up for different committees. And for community engagement, this is a visualization of the responses that we received, right? On the left of this chart are the different ideas that were percolating for commissioners. On the right side of this chart was what was resonating with folks, whether they were committee members themselves. So you all responding to this chart paper, commissioners at large, or community members who were in attendance in that December meeting. And what we saw on this through this exercise was that tribal engagement was a top voted priority. We also heard the need for, really dedicated resources, whether that's a formal budget line item to be able to fund some of that engagement work and institutionalize it, right? There were a lot of different threads of that conversation. Now, in March, one of the questions that I posed to this committee and to commissioners at large was, when we think about the racial equity framework, we're looking for methodologies and tools that departments are picking up and using, right? We've talked about how we don't want this to be just a plan on the page, so it needs to be something that can be implemented. We want it to be impactful, right? And so there's different considerations that I've listed on this sticky note on the right side here, but just want to frame this up for you all again as we go into the discussion. What are the methodologies and tools that are actionable? So can it be implemented? Urgent, what needs to happen now? And third, structural. So does it foster sustainable internal shifts towards equity? Will it stick? Will it scale? Can it continue? All right. So if we can now go into the last slide here for discussion. Great. We, in March, once we asked those questions, these were the themes we started to come up with. On the left side are recommendations to elevate into the framework itself, and we'll kind of have a conversation about that. On the right side are other pieces that came up as important to the process of developing the framework, right? So again, left side might be something that state departments and agencies are picking up and then saying, okay, this is the practice I should be looking towards. The right side is as we develop what's on the left, these are really important things to keep in mind. So just want to show that we're really hearing those pieces and capturing them as well. But for the purposes of today's conversation, really want to be focusing on that left side. And to get us started, the question I would pose to this group is, when we look at these three items, institutionalize the state approach to community engagement, such as through the toolkit, meet community where they are through other actions such as those bullet points we're seeing below, and address barriers to participation. If you take those holistically, do those recommendations support departments and agencies in creating deep, meaningful, effective community engagement? I'll start with that, and then I'm curious if folks are seeing anything that's missing that we want to add in. Yeah, Commissioner Salas, would you like to get us started?
Sure. I'm trying to remember which of our committee meetings we had this conversation in, but we did on the number one, institutionalized state approach to community engagement. I think it should really capture institutionalize and fund, because what we saw was a lot of feedback that while this is something that many times in departments want to do, sub-departments within the department would want to do, usually there are not many resources that actually support this part of the work. And so and I would just say resource, so maybe institutionalize and resource a state approach to community engagement. However we do it, I just think that things will not happen if the resources aren't available, so that then we can have the even addressing barriers to participation from providing food, childcare, et cetera. All of those things actually have a price tag to them. So I would just add that, and I do think that it would merit that it really stand at, as we think about 1, 2, 3, that it really sits in that broader category.
Great, thank you for that, Commissioner Salas. And it sounds like that sparked thoughts from other committee members as well. So we'll go over to Commissioner Bowles and then possibly Commissioner Matthews. I think I saw a hand up.
What stands out for me is these three things are all fine and useful strategies, but there still seems to be a lack of connection between community engagement and what are we engaging for. Like if we're getting feedback, but it's not connected to impact or systems change or outcomes, then what was the point of the feedback? Like if we don't have some way to connect the way that the community engagement gets operationalized or turned into the change that the community engagement was for, then we just have very nice strategies and things that we're doing or that agencies are doing to engage, but they're not turning that engagement. There's no accountability. There's no like, we did the engagement, we listened, and we did these things. So in the asset analysis, there are sections that talk about the impacts that those agencies saw once they engaged, which I was really happy to see. So I know that it's there, but I think it's important not to disconnect these three strategies from the responsibility that they have to result in something meaningful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate you raising that, Commissioner Bowles, and I think really speaks to some of the threads of impact. It's a few threads I'm thinking about. This idea of impact really tying to the spectrum of community engagement, right? Are we checking the box or is it really driving towards something? And then this piece around accountability and sort of what happens leading up to, during, and also after that engagement piece and being really intentional. It looks like Dr. Estes also has a hand raised. So I'm not sure if Dr. Estes, you're responding to Commissioner Bowles. If so, do you want to respond?
Yeah, I do have a response. I want to be mindful that as staff, we're not looking at it as solely these three things. We're also looking at the intersection with the other committees, such as data and such as Budget Equity Committee. And I think when we start to talk about community engagement, there is a connectivity to accountability on the data side. And I think the opportunity for a toolkit is to be able to map out how the community engagement should include, you know, understanding and sharing impact. And so it's not, this is hard for us to see in a committee structure because you're not seeing the full picture of a framework, but these are things that intersect constantly. I think even in a conversation that I've had recently with a department here in the state around with a couple commissioners on this type of work, there is the intersection that we're already talking about. I think even in other committees, we are talking about the intersection. And so I want to make sure that while these are specific to community engagement, there's a tremendous amount of intersection happening throughout the entire framework and with across committees. We're just not quite seeing it in this space yet.
So I just want to respond quickly. I do think it is important for our discussion around community engagement to be intentional about that connection. In order to keep people engaged, you know, if they feel like, you know, here you go again, asking me more questions about what I think without us actually tying it to the things that you're saying that it's intersecting with, which I understand that it is, then that makes our engagement even more difficult. So I do think it's important to not continue to use the language of community engagement because we do use it as a check the box. And I think we need to start talking about it as it pertains to those interconnected pieces.
Yeah, and the other end of this is doing it in plain and simple language because community engagement itself can be misconstrued in many different ways. And so being really clear about what we mean and how the spectrum of prevention can help define some of that out.
Oh, I'm sorry, I muted myself. Commissioner Matthews, do you have a thought there?
I do. So Commissioner Salas and Commissioner Bowles did um, more eloquently state a couple of thoughts that I did have, but I have one remaining um, idea about something that I think is potentially missing. So yeah, I think it was clear based on the feedback that we received that yes, we've got to engage tribal um, stakeholders around the state. And I think that's great. I also think it needs to be broader than that. And this goes back to what Commissioner Hedrick was speaking to earlier, or maybe Commissioner Bowles. What are we doing about other special populations? And I think of it from the kind of the language access piece, that standard that we're held to in healthcare. So whoever we're serving, if there's a meaningful population that meets a certain threshold, like you have to, by regulation, serve them in their language. We don't really have that, maybe aside from geographical engagement, and we were speaking to that. So we're going to try to go everywhere. I know that's going to be baked in already, but I want to make sure that we don't miss the opportunity to somehow spell out special populations that are being served by either the state or specific entities. So it could be something of the nature similar to like language access. Um, you know, whatever your populations look like, then in addition to geographical engagement, you have to make sure that you are engaging with them, listening to their ideas, because I could easily see state entities checking the box and then, I'm sorry, never talking to Black people in urban areas because it's not spelled out. And so I do think that we have to explicitly include that somehow in this part of the framework so that way folks can't get away with talking to everybody except the people who they're really afraid to talk to because they're afraid of what they're going to say and the feedback that they're going to share. Um, so I don't see that in there necessarily. We have, um, be responsive to different cultures, but nothing that really says, and you have to make sure you're talking to the cultures that you're serving. In the corporate world, the market drives that because you want to sell to people, but in the government system, you can totally be responsible to serve certain populations and then just never talk to them. I think that also will help on there was one thing, it got no votes, but on the disability side, like if you're serving people with disabilities, you got to talk to them. That is the heart of equity. And so I think we need to add maybe one more if we're going to kind of absorb the exploring ways to provide childcare, food, or compensation. I saw that on the page before in number one, in the institutionalized approach. Maybe this other category is who are you going to engage with, and how do we explicitly spell some of that out in the framework?
Yeah, thank you for that, Commissioner Matthews. And, I think this thread around special populations is a really helpful, just one example of how like we're connecting the dots across committees, right? Because it's also calling me back to the conversation that you also raised during the data committee meeting back in February. And so just really thinking about um, some of like the connections there. It looks like Commissioner Salas and then Dr. Estes also had hands up, so I'll go over to Commissioner Salas.
Yes, and Commissioner Hedrick and Dr. Estes could also correct me if I'm wrong on this, but my understanding as to why there was such a high response around tribal community engagement was because there was an executive order. And so I do think that part of some of the recommendations is that, and this also goes to Commissioner Matthews' point, which is that in certain instances, it does have to be directive. There has to be a strong directive to do something, whether it's through regulation in terms of if you're going to do X body of work, and these are the folks who are going to be impacted by that work or need to be engaged. Therefore, there is a directive in order to do this. Because I do think that therefore, the work is not prioritized. And so I do think that there's something that needs to be maybe here I would say number 4, which is really to look to regulation, executive orders, other things that really will foment greater participation and greater prioritization of community engagement. Again, I know that's why we had such a strong response, because everybody's like, no, we have to do this, so we're going to prioritize this level of engagement, which is right. And I think that then goes to, well, then what other how do we ensure other populations are also being engaged, whether because this is the region that folks inhabit, and therefore these are folks we need to be connected to. So that would be my only other addition.
Thank you, Commissioner Salas. Dr. Estes?
Thank you. First, Commissioner Matthews, this question around the engagement of special populations, I think it's not just for community engagement, but it is a broader need for the entire framework. And so some of the things that we're thinking of are looking at how we build out really some clarity on intersectionality. And, we have spoken to advocates from the aging community. We have spoken to advocates from a variety of abilities and the disability community and developmental disabilities community about kind of the intersection of racial equity and their work. And so there is a need to be prescriptive at some level within this framework, but this is a framework that also has to meet the needs of 200 plus departments, agencies, boards, and commissions that do different work. And so I think there's an opportunity in creating a directive and again, this is a public advisory body. The framework can be a space where you recommend a directive, and we have to define who would articulate that directive or who that directive should come from. But you can, and there's a likelihood that some of these recommendations will have the who should do it and the how do you do it. So if it is about engaging, different communities or special populations, it's looking at your data. What is your data saying? Disaggregating your data, not just only looking at it by race, but looking at it by geography, looking by, different abilities, language, socioeconomic status. We have to be able to provide guidance in a framework. It is other entities that are really better positioned to put forth some sort of directive, but I think the commission is positioned to put forth a recommendation around a directive, if that makes any sense.
That does. Thank you.
I'm hearing some things around, we want to make sure that this is working in conjunction with other components of the racial equity framework, being really purposeful. That's number one. Number two, hearing some things around maybe recommendations towards a directive potentially. And I think there's a broader conversation around, like the tools that drive accountability for pushing institutions to engage, right? It's not just be responsive, but I think to use your words, Commissioner Matthews, like you have to go talk to people. And so what that looks like and what tools will push towards that is maybe I'll put like almost like a dotted box at the bottom around number 4 that we're exploring here. Let me make sure I've captured sort of the high level. I know there's a lot of other key points underneath that. I think one other question I would pose to this committee as we prepare to wrap up is, those 3 dimensions that I was talking about earlier, is it actionable, is it urgent, and is it structural? I just want to do a quick check with committee members as you think about these 3 and the 4th, including some of the changes that we're talking through. Do these 4 areas feel actionable, urgent, and structural? And if not, is there anything else we need to get clearer on? Dr. Estes?
If I may add, I want to make sure that the committee is aware that while we are looking for 3 to 5 actionable, urgent, structural tools or methodologies to include in the framework, we're also not going to not include things that we want to work towards in the future. As it was mentioned earlier in this meeting, we are in a certain social political climate right now. There are some things that might be feasible in a year or two versus what we have going on right now. So just, knowing that we are in a certain space, I think there are things that it's what you can do and what could be something that is implemented a little bit further along down the line. Again, this is a journey, not a sprint. And we want to make sure that we're being mindful and accounting for some of those other items that could come up in the future, or that these 3 to 5 actionable, urgent structural tools and methodologies work towards.
I'll chime in as well. I do feel that they are actionable, but to Dr. Estes's point, at differing levels. What I mean is just thinking about, a couple of slides ago, the continuum. I don't think we're going to get to defer to um, a lot of state agencies in the near future, just being frank, considering the current environment. But that's okay. I think what folks may need to do is focus on where can we go? How can we take 2 steps forward without getting our heads blown off in this environment? Just progress on this journey towards greater equity. And so I think it's actionable from that perspective. I think it's all urgent. And I think the things that we have brought up, discussed over the last year, the reason they've been elevated as priorities is because they feel urgent to the people, the communities, to the commissioners, to all of us. And on the structural side, that's what we're building, or at least I think trying to provide guidance on how you could potentially change your structures to Commissioner Bowles's earlier question and concern. I think the recommendation has to include something about how do you change your system? And if you do, again, thinking about what's feasible this year, next year, and down the road, but at the end of the day, it's got to be systemic change, and then it is structural. And so I do think that what we have so far is it meets those requirements, just at differing levels on each of them.
Thank you for that perspective, Commissioner Matthews. Commissioner Salas?
I'm going to focus on number 2, and maybe number 3 too, but I just think about the headers and how important that, language matters. And I think about this, about instead of saying meet community where they are, it's really about part of like a directive, it would be know the infrastructure that exists in community. No, so understand what already exists. So know the community infrastructure that exists, the needs and high points of engagement within community, something. So I would just put that as, obviously we could wordsmith it a little bit more, but I think it has to really, any of these recommendations have to be, again, instructive. And so if you say learn or know the community infrastructure, that means that individuals will then seek out to understand, okay, what community-based organizations are there? What faith communities exist? What is already in existence? Because sometimes when you seek to do community engagement, if you're not directed to really understand what's already there, you will recreate the wheel, or you will engage, not properly engage. And so I do think, again, without wordsmithing, I think that one needs to just have a stronger header, while obviously the element and content I agree with. And then I think the other ones are, address barriers to participation, to participation, but I also ongoing, something that talks about and continual, address barriers to one time and continual participation. So it also sets a tone of community engagement is not just like you said, you check the box, but it's ongoing, and I think we should name it in that header as well.
Yeah, I appreciate the specification around the language, right? And really getting clear on like, what do we mean by this? I know meet community where they are, we often talk about that. But what you're proposing on the flip side of know the infrastructure that exists, just gets a layer more concrete. Dr. Estes, did you have a thought?
Yeah, just a response in that I think some of this is what the staff are trying to do and model in its community engagement. And I think these are good elements and thoughts for consideration and inclusion in the toolkit around the idea of being prescriptive on knowing what assets exist within communities, where are the high points of need. Those are a lot of questions that and even where do you engage? Those are some of the questions that we actually already do engage with agencies and departments as well as community partners. And it's how do you then get other agencies and departments to really start to build that into their toolbox? And so I appreciate the restructuring of it and the just being a little bit more precise. And again, I keep emphasizing precision and plain language because I think we want to be really clear on the direction for agencies and departments.
Absolutely. I'm keeping an eye on time, and I see that we are winding down to the maybe final few minutes. Were there any other thoughts from this committee, more broadly, pieces of language that we want to consider refining, other pieces that feel important but maybe not captured here currently? Okay. So hearing none, I'll just sort of recap and then pass it back to Commissioner Salas. Around these recommendations, some of the things I heard were institutionalize and resource, possibly a state approach to community engagement, really thinking about the funding and resourcing piece as a critical element of sustaining community engagement, initiating it and sustaining it. Number 2, I heard some pieces around accountability and making sure, again, once again, that we're bringing in those tools, possibly recommendations for a directive. Number 3, heard some things around refinement of language. So wanting to talk about switching from meet community where they are to something know the infrastructure that exists, but the headline there is really balancing that precision and plain language. And so all of that taking into consideration. And then the last part, number 4, really underscoring, I know I saw a lot of nodding heads during this part of the discussion, is like the purpose, and capturing, what is the purpose and the intention of community engagement. It's to drive that systems change. And if it's not for that, if we're not changing systems, if we're not changing structures, then community engagement maybe is not effective or exists in silos. And so those are some of the things I think that I'm taking away from this conversation. I think that it's uh, quite a few points for staff to chew on as we think about building that racial equity framework outline in June. And I think to Dr. Estes's point about, recognizing that this feels like a very constrained exercise in committee meetings. I think one of the reasons we are building towards June is so that we can then put it all together and start to have those big picture conversations and see what's bubbling up across committee structures. So with that, I will pass it back to Commissioner Salas.
Thank you so much, Joyce. We will now take any public comments related to agenda item number 7, workshop prioritizing community engagement strategy discussion.
Thank you, Commissioner. There are no public comments for this item.
Thank you, Agustin. Now we will move then to agenda item number 8, which is next steps for staff action. Our discussions today covered a wide range of ideas on community engagement strategy. We would like to engage the commission staff to look into key areas that will support our future commission meetings and progress towards drafting and implementing our framework. Dr. Estes, what are some of the action items that you captured from today?
Thank you, Commissioner Salas. One action item is around identifying basic questions in advance for communities related to the roadshow. Let's see. Here it is. Looking for and researching, as well as leveraging your networks around east of the Sierras and making sure that we're filling not only geographical gaps, but also other special populations, whether they be faith-based, Indian country, and making sure that we're just increasing the spread of our engagement as much as possible within this year as we build out the framework, but also building it out as a way of continued engagement. This conversation around the community engagement strategy just gave me a little bit more details as to how to best think and frame out the content around being prescriptive, being directive, making sure we're elevating elements of intersectionality and connecting the elements of the framework between community engagement, outcomes, and impact. Those are the main ones I have. Are there any other next steps that the committee would like to have staff move forward with? Say, I don't believe we have a meeting. We may have a meeting scheduled tentatively for September, but really our focus over the next several months is kind of bringing together all the pieces of the framework. So if the committee does feel a need to meet, we're more than happy to figure out how to make that happen.
Thank you so much. I think I would just say that as we move forward in this process, I think it'll also will determine our level of engagement. So seeing no additional committee input around next steps, we wanted to now just move to first thank Dr. Estes for and all the staff for all the work today. These items will be instrumental in moving our work forward, and we look forward to reviewing them in future meetings. We will now proceed to adjournment. So I just want to really thank you to the Racial Equity Commission staff, its commissioners. Thank you for the public for joining us today. And this brings our meeting to adjournment. May we adjourn our committee meeting by common consent?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I just want to say thank you again to the Racial Equity Commission, commissioners, panelists, and public for joining us today. The Racial Equity Commission will convene again for our commission meeting on June 26, 2025. The meeting will be accessible in person in Salinas and virtually, and we invite folks to join us for this meeting. With that, we will be adjourning today at 4:36 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks.